Welcome to our second day for the Prism Awards celebration, everyone. We are so excited to have you with us. Thanks for hanging in there with our slight delay getting started this morning. We are so happy to have you, and we're so happy to have our amazing panelists here today. Oh, there we go. Now we know we're streaming. All right. So with no further ado, I'm going to allow our panelists to introduce themselves and get started talking about the amazing forum of Anthology for queer comics. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much. Hi, I am Malachi Lilly. I use they, them pronouns. I am an agender, Philadelphia-based illustrator, poet, curator, and energy worker. I'm probably the rookie of the crew, and I'm so excited to meet all these amazing comic artists and illustrators that I wish I could just meet in person and connect with and learn so much more from. But I'm happy that we have this technology to connect. I'm looking forward to chatting with all of you.
Hello, my name is Netta. I am an illustrator, kids lit, author, gamer, a whole lot of art-related things. I am so excited for this panel and just the experience of working with everybody and reading things and getting to know people through their art. It's been such an amazing experience. Definitely looking forward to the feedback we go over and seeing how things go.
Hi, everybody. My name is Victor Kearney. I am a writer and a Xanadu enthusiast. Can never say that word. I'm really excited to be a part of this, just to see everyone, but also to have a good conversation. So I'm glad to be here.
Hello, I'm Andrew Wheeler. My pronouns are he, him. I am a comic book writer whose works include Canadian queer superhero Freelance and the feminist fantasy series Another Castle. But I'm here in my capacity as the editor of the Shout Out Anthology, which is a collection of stories by an incredible spectrum of queer creators telling the kind of stories we wish we'd been able to grow up with as kids.
Hi, my name's Tab Kimpton, pronouns he, him. I'm the co-editor of Come Together, a European anthology of erotic comics, which is one of the finalists for the anthology category this year, along with Alex Hassan, my co-editor. It's just wonderful to be here, and thank you so much to all these judges who read through our stuff,
Well, welcome everyone. And I guess just to sort of get us started today, what is it that drew each of you either to judge for the category of anthology or to create comics in the form of an anthology? What is it about that form that allowed you to do what you wanted to do or sparked your interest in a way that you enjoy?
I think. Oh, go ahead, Netta.
Okay, thank you. I would say for me, anthology is always something that, if you look at it from the outside, it seems like a giant mountain to overcome. And I feel like that's always going to be something you're going to find the most interesting things if you take the time to read through, because there's so much diversity, there's so many different ideas, there's so much talent coming together into one area. And I feel like I always find some of the best gems when it comes from a group effort. So that was something I was really excited to look for.
Yeah, I think being a judge for the anthology section, it's kind of like speed dating. I feel like I got to know so many different artists and writers through that process. If it was one of the single story narrative comics, you spent a long time with one story, but I got to meet so many characters and know so many perspectives. And that's really beautiful. I'm someone who really loves connection and seeing these different styles and different stories. I'm like, oh, I could see myself collaborating with this person. Oh, I want to see more from this person, and just getting a variety of views, because we can, especially now in quarantine, you know, be in these little bubbles and be in the bubbles of just our most micro community. So this was an opportunity to connect with as many artists and people and writers as possible. And I loved every minute of it.
Same. I would say that it's nice to see what other artists and other creators are doing, but it's also a learning process. You get to see how others really put stories together, how they tell their stories, and it's really exciting for me. And I love anthologies because, again, it's a big journey, because you're going into something knowing there's going to be tons of different ways of explaining it, going through it, and the art and the writing and what have you. There's so much that you get from it. So I was excited to judge, all the work, but also really see the talent and learn from this
talent. For me, I used to be a journalist, a comics journalist, and one of the responsibilities that I took on for myself in that role was that I wanted to be an advocate for giving people the opportunity to find their voices and to fight for an industry that was not gatekeeping queer voices out of comics. And so when Stephen Andrews, the publisher of TO Comics that published Shout Out, came to me and said, would you like to edit an anthology for us? That was the thing that was at the forefront of my mind, was that I want to be using my position to lift other people up. And an anthology gives you that power. So in many cases, we were giving writers and artists their very first opportunity to produce a published comics work, or we were giving people the opportunity to be in a book for the first time, or to share stories that they'd never been able to tell before. That's the wonder of an anthology to me. But you have no excuse not to really use that platform to sort of cross-pollinate, to let people discover each other and different ideas and different voices and different creators.
Quick question following that, Andrew. Was Shout Out your first editor of an anthology? So I know Toronto Comics has done a fair number of anthologies before. So was it your first?
It was my first time editing an anthology, yes. Yeah. I mean, I had been editor-in-chief of Comics Alliance prior to that, so I had editorial experience, but yeah, as an editor, this was my first time. And I was very lucky to have BC Holmes and Joe McGill as my fellow editors, my deputies on board. So Joe Met especially has done a tremendous amount of anthology work in the past, and Stephen Andrews has now published, I think, seven or eight anthologies. So the publisher has had a very good grounding.
Oh, nice. Come Together was my first one, and it made me do another one, Bite the Bug and all of that. But Come Together came about. I've been self-publishing webcomics and doing Kickstarters for about one a year for a very long time, about 7 or 8 now. And I'm reaching, I'm not that old, but I'm reaching the limitations of what my body can do as a creator. I find I can't actually produce as much artwork as I used to anymore, just because of physical sort of restrictions and RSI. So it was looking into what I could do now as a person. And one thing I'm very good at is packing boxes and doing spreadsheets and all that stuff that a lot of artists absolutely hate.
God bless you.
I will answer emails my entire day and just love every second of it, but make me actually sit down and draw. I'm like, oh no, that's hard, because packing a book and sending it out, I can get that right. There's a yes, no, did it get sent that day? Yes, brilliant, it's there. Oh, it got lost in the post, I'll send you a new one. But with art, it's so, there's no right answer. It's exhausting. And I think I need that to, like, the admin stuff to break up all of the creative work. So I got into it as more of a, well, someone's got to do this admin, so it might as well be me. I can talk a bit more about, so I'm really interested, so I'm mainly talking about Shout Out as well, because Andrew's the other finalist in this, about sort of themes and why the anthology started in the first place. Come Together, I'm based in the UK, so it was about I did have plans at some point to do a UK-based erotica anthology, and then the stuff with Brexit happened, and my national pride just went gone. I was like, so the idea of doing like a pro-European thing sounded like a really fun thing, because sometimes it does feel like all of the cool comic stuff is happening over in America and Canada. Just something to talk about the sort of talents that can come out of there as well. So that's what got us started on that one.
Why erotic?
Why erotica? I've got I've got the spiel I learned when writing the Kickstarter, which is a very nice answer. I can pop that one out. It's because porn is always political when you get marginalised people involved. So you might as well go full throttle into it. And I think erotica is about connection. And I think it does feel sometimes that you're doing preaching to the choir. I don't, that people already picking up this book are probably going to be pro-immigration or things like that. But anything you can do, it just felt so powerless with all of this going on. And it's still going on sort of 3 years later. We're still, don't know how much you keep up with UK politics, because there's enough politics happening where everyone else is from right now. But we're still trying to leave the EU in some level of shambles. It was like, what can you do as small creatives to try and fight against this division that seems to just be happening all over? And I think intimate connection is as important to that as friendship and that. And I think it's in my other work, I do more erotic stuff. Obviously, we're like a PG-13, all ages thing. But I think we've had a number of years of people stepping away from erotica and sexuality stuff when tied in with like LGBT issues, because of the it's not about sex, it's not about sex. But sometimes it is about sex, and it is about the connections that we make with other people through that. And that's why I'm drawn to erotica as a general form.
I found it interesting what you said, that you felt so many things were happening in other places, because from an American standpoint, I always felt like so many things are happening over across the pond, or another place that I always feel like they always have something going on. I want to say it's Brazil. So it's always seeing things going on. I'm like, oh my God, they have so much going on there. I want to be a part of it. But to hear that about us, it's like such an eye-opener from the perspectives people have.
Yeah, because a little bit of a segue, but Shout Out actually has a Brazilian artist, Dante, I should know this, who's actually Dante and H. Puyo. They did a short story in Shout Out as well. And they're in next anthology. There's a big Brazilian comics theme going on. And it reminds me a little bit of the French scene, actually. But I think they've got such historical comics with sort of Asterix and things like that they've managed to get away from that comics are for kids thing. That I think definitely, at least in England and maybe America, definitely has. So I've just assumed Malachi, Netta, and Victor, you're American. Yes, you're all in America right now. And Andrew, you're in Toronto?
I am, but I'm British by birth.
Okay, yeah. Bath.
Sorry? By birth. Bath.
By birth, or you're from Bath. Yes.
I'm from Hastings, not Bath.
Hastings, all right, cool. It's quite nice to get out of the way.
So here's a question for our judges. Seeing as that many of our editors are, have connections to a European or outside of the United States culture, which, I think a lot of times we forget as Americans how much of a mixing pot we are. As judges, do you feel like, is this the new British invasion? What is it? Do you think there's anything culturally related to the anthologies that spoke out to you this year as a committee?
Definitely a lot of the settings didn't seem very American. I feel like a lot of American comics are always like New York City, California, somewhere in a city, whereas a lot of these comics I noticed had more of a flower field, countryside, tavern-esque kind of feel. And I actually appreciated that because it was different. And that's what I meant earlier when I said you can find so many unique things in anthologies. So it's like having that in there was like, this is really good. I like the characters. I like the plot. I like the setting. It just gave more to the overall stories.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's the neat thing about it. As I was saying, like you're going on a journey. You're going different places. And when you think about erotica, it happens in so many different places. It's not just bad within the big cities. It's on the floor. It's in the barn. It's all over the place. And it's those moments that you really, really connect with when it happens. So I love the fact that we were able to go different places, that we were able to kind of take your mind in different spots and areas and even challenge your own thoughts. So I kind of enjoyed that.
I have to admit, I was not really as honing into the fact that it was European or not. I was focused more on the fact that these anthologies held within them a diversity of voices, a diversity of people, of bodies, of forms, of perspectives within the anthologies. And so perhaps in focusing on a European, broadening your scope, you were able to get more voices, more unique stories, more of a diversity of people, of lovers, of narratives. And that's really what I was focused on and what felt important to me. I didn't want to see an anthology where everyone was white and everyone was able-bodied and everyone was cisgendered, I didn't want that at all. And so I feel like your two anthologies and the Sylvan anthology really had a broad range of many different types of people and experiences, and some not just people. I'm very much attached to creature-esque, humanoid, shape-shifting, interdimensional. There's a lot of creature things happening as well, lots of fantasy happening as well, and I think that fantasy and imagination is directly connected to the queer experience, as we have to imagine our own bodies a lot, imagine who we are, and create ourselves, recreate ourselves even after birth. So I thought that I really honed into the imaginative spaces more than what nation is this from? That wasn't as relevant to me.
There's what you said reminded me. There's a lovely story in Shout Out, which is about this sort of interdimensional blob that asks a name of a person. I don't know if you recall that one reading through, and that was one that really stood out to me. And the person doesn't have a name because sort of in trans communities, sort of naming oneself is such a powerful thing. And it's interesting when you combine that with fairy tales and things. And very sweet, the story has that person actually asking the name of this sort of eminence of light. Yeah, just really nice, creative look at it. Yeah.
That story is the Name of the Forest by Day Irwin and Killian Ng, who actually are both based here in Toronto, which a lot of our creators are, well, actually, we have a probably more Toronto creator than from anywhere else in the book, but I would say it's far from a majority, and we were very lucky in being able to bring in people from all around the world. But as you were saying, Malachi, it's not necessarily about the place they're from, but the voices that they could bring to the book. That was what we were looking for. In some cases, those things do intersect. We have a two-spirit story, so you would only get that from someone from that community. That was tremendously important to be able to include that coming from a Canadian publisher. But in many cases, the stories being about diverse locations and being set in diverse places is just a reflection of the fact that queer is universal, that all of our identities exist everywhere in the world, you know. So to embrace that and represent that accurately means that you have to have an international voice within whatever parameters you've set for yourself as a book.
That's really interesting. Andrew, did you have an open call for Shout Out, or did you more approach artists? Yeah.
There were very few people that we sort of reached out to directly, and in those cases it was just to sort of get some people who we knew that could be sort of anchors for the book. For the most part, yes, it was an open call, and people with absolutely no published work were encouraged to submit it so that we could have those voices in there as well. We didn't want to add another gatekeeper to a community that has too many gatekeepers.
Yes, we did an open call as well. I have to admit, submissions day is one of the worst and best days of putting together an anthology. Just going through and choosing and giving feedback, because we gave people the opportunity to have feedback on their pitches if they were unsuccessful as well. And it's just heartbreaking, to be honest, because a lot of these stories are excellent, but it's it not fitting the theme, or and you almost, sometimes with an anthology, I think you don't really know the theme until you have all of the submissions there, and you can see the book, you can see the forest as opposed to the individual trees.
The thing I tried to tell people when we rejected them, or just as a sort of general statement to anyone that submitted and didn't get into the book, is you could have been the second best person that submitted, but if your idea was similar to the first best person in the book, we can't have you both. That's the reality of putting an anthology together, is that you don't want to have too many stories that hit the same beats or have the same style. There are a lot of reasons that someone might not get into an anthology. It's not always about talent. In fact, it's very rarely about talent.
And sometimes, for Come Together in particular, it was setting a bit. There's only so many times you can watch people make out in a bedroom. So I'm just like, all right, let's. So we've got this one's an airport. This one, because we got a lot of stories which were people meeting, long distance relationship and seeing each other for the first time, which is a truly beautiful story, and especially now it's a hard story. So I'm fresh off dropping a housemate off at the airport because their visa ran out today. But there's only so many of those stories you can have in.
But the one that we ran into a lot was merperson stories about river deities and river creatures and sea creatures. For some reason, that was the zeitgeist when we were putting the book together. So it was actually H. Preo and Dante Luis, who you mentioned earlier. Their story, I think, is the river god story that made
the river god one.
At which point, everyone else who had a river story.
Yeah, we had a bunch of mermaid stories too, and then we just
people love mermaids.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, mermaids, sea amphibious creatures, they are liminal beings between land and water, between mammalian and fish or amphibious. So it makes sense. A lot of people feel between. A lot of people feel like they want to belong to multiple worlds, or that they embody multiple worlds. And there's also so much diversity within the life. I mean, the deeper you go, the stranger and more alien and extraterrestrial the forms seem to be. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm definitely one of those sea creatures. So it's actually really exciting to me that you were turning away so many sea creatures and river deities. I'm like, oh my God, my kin, they're out there. Where are you? Find
if someone
me.
wants to do a queer anthology of mer stories, talent is there. The idea is there.
I can't wait.
I was going to say,
that's an interesting take to have so many people who are interested in the mer and the sea creatures. I wouldn't say it's the opposite, but I get excited when I see those lesser known animals and creatures, such as selkies, or just ghosts and things that are native to people's culture. I get so excited when I can find them. I'm like, oh, so many people don't know about these. This is going to be a good one.
Oh, same. As a big mythology nerd, I feel the same. Absolutely. I think that's what was also cool about the Sylvan one, because I saw so many artists coming up with their own creatures. They like everyone had the concept of like, my story must connect to the forest. Like, how many different ways can we engage with the forest? So in that case, it was like one setting, and all the different ways to engage with it, and that was really exciting to see.
Yeah, that was definitely a theme. Forest, as you say, as a liminal space, the forest proves to be so fascinating for creators, and apparently for queer creators especially, because we didn't even realize until we had finalized our collection of stories how many of them were set in the forest or at the edge of the forest. It's a space where, once upon a time queer people gravitated towards cities because we felt safe there. Now that we all live in cities where we feel safe, there is this magical allure of the forest as the place where maybe we can fall into self-discovery, where we can, explore freedom that we don't necessarily feel we have. There's a lot to unpack, and I haven't managed to unpack it all. But as a theme, it really resonated and struck me.
I would say once upon a time we sought safety in the forest. I think about witch covens and like even like Hideaway Hermitage, where like queer people flocked and hid, under the eye, and the ceremonies that happened late into the night in the deepest, darkest part of the forest where we hid our queerness. So it feels like maybe a sort of ancestral return to the primordial.
Because it's some really awesome insight. Sorry.
How going to myth or legend and creating our own stories is creating a lot of queer history is lost, and inserting our perception of queer narratives into histories or stories or legends is one way of just making a place for ourselves in the world. Because there's an interesting thing that happens, like if you write a story about an elf, people start telling you what elves do, or the types of elves that there are. Like someone knows research in-depth elves. And it's just so nice that you can take some of this stuff and throw away what you've decided, you do and do it from a new angle. One of the webcomics that I published on my own is one called Minority Monsters, and it's literally doing that. One of the most popular characters from it is an asexual succubus, which just plays with the fact that you can be what you want to be. Like, it doesn't matter so much what you started as, you get to decide. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's quite interesting things that are going on here. I love that this is bringing up, getting to see themes and trends and now analyzing whether or not, does this have to do with our queerness? How can this connect? For the judges, hearing about that editorial process, how much of your process feels like it kind of reflects that similar editorial process that anthology editors have to go through? And then as you were reading the anthologies that were submitted, what other types of themes were really prevalent in the works that came through this year?
I would say self-discovery is always a great thing to see. I think when you look at the characters and what they kind of go through, as you think about erotica or you think about anything in that realm, it is a self-discovery. It is something where you're challenging or thinking about, do I like this? Do I want to like this? I think about the queer world, especially for men, how we kind of come into this, a lot of us don't really have any idea how everything goes. I know for myself, growing up in the South, I had no idea what that looks like, what it even means until I saw a gay couple. But when you think about erotica, you think about it's a whole different type of thing. And I think that when I'm reading these stories, I like the fact that it is that discovery of what you like, what you think you didn't like, and getting out of the shadows when it comes to your sexuality and feelings and emotions and desires. So I love stuff like that because for a lot of us, we're still battling with these feelings and desires and what we like and do we want to wear a harness? What is a harness? Like all these things. So I love the self-discovery piece. I love that feeling when I'm reading.
I have a question for the judges. Or it might be more of a general thing for the Prism Awards. Are you getting more anthology submissions than you used to? Like, are anthologies happening more now that Kickstarter's sort of a big thing? Or are we getting less? Like, I'm winding up an anthology book at the moment, and it has been a hell of a year for artists and everyone, and just trying to get things sorted and things. Do you think next year you might have a lot less anthologies because of what's happened? Did you have more this year? What's like the level of submissions?
So maybe I can jump in from the ether and help out with that question, because I think most of our committee this year is either entirely new, which we're really excited about, or new to this category. And in the 4 years that we've been doing this now, anthology is the category that gets the least number of submissions, partly because, as you both know, it takes a lot of effort to make an anthology. There's a lot of things to coordinate to make that happen. They're fairly massive undertaking. I do feel like over the years we've seen, so we have less than 10 anthologies that are usually submitted. But over the years, we usually get one or two more submissions in anthology each year. And that, I don't know if that has to do with how many anthologies are being created, as opposed to more people finding out about the awards, because the awards are self-submitted. So yeah, that's an interesting, curious question that we don't quite have the information to answer, and we'll see next year. I mean, people may be having massive amounts of time, to work on these as a pet project kind of thing, outside of it being a publisher thing. So we may see more we may see more independently created anthologies. Or it may be that the emotional toll has just been overwhelming. We'll find out the next year, and around usually somewhere January, February through March is when our submissions are. So we'll be excited to find that out. We do have a question from our audience members asking, do you remember what your first experience with anthologies was like, and how have your thoughts or approach changed since that first anthology? So for the creators putting that together, for judges, maybe your first experience reading anthology to more especially this particular instance, having to analyze and critically think while you're judging them.
Yeah, I want to say to your question that you just asked, I'm kind of curious about what sort of anthologies might come out of this quarantine time, because I feel like it could be a really intimate form of connection without being in person with each other. So I'm hoping that something is being gestated in this time for that. I think that could be really beautiful. I know that when I'm curating an event, for example, I like to bring in as many artists as possible to put into the space, because I feel like it just generates more energy and gets the word out more, and you can bring in so many more people. But in this case, it could be an anthology could be an embodiment of a party, which we can't have right now. So it's the party is this book. I know I have a little crew of hip-hop folks, and we all write very strange smut together, and we're working on something together, and that's been a really cool connection, that knowing that we're coming together in this book. So I hope there's more anthologies next year. I hope that that doesn't like dwindle out, because it feels like a very tangible form of connection we can have right now. But as far as like my relationship to anthologies, I didn't grow up with a lot of money, and so I didn't have a lot of money for comic books growing up. But I would save up my money for anthologies, because the kind of most bang for my buck kind of thing, I could read as many artists and as many stories as I could in like one book. So I think I have a kind of a kinship to anthologies, because they were most of my collection growing up.
I think my connection to anthologies was I might have come across my first one accidentally, and I might have just loved the cover art and bought it or got it from the library. And reading it, what it did for me was it showed me that you can, one, have multiple stories in one book, and two, it was just very eye-opening to how you can tell a short story and it still be good. Because before that, I always, thought you had to stretch it out, stretch the story out, make it as long as possible. But when I saw all these different short stories and they had come to a conclusion in their own, and they held their own, that was really something I took in as far as my own writing, like learning how to make shorter stories that still have an impact, even if it's only 10 pages compared to thinking I need to do 50 pages to make it count. So I think that's what really pushed me to be a better writer and just dive deeper into being open to different genres.
I will say that for me as a kid, books were always the first, kind of introduction for those types of, for horror stories. I love scary things. You can scare me with anything you got. I love it. I think about scary stories you tell in the dark. That was something I grew up with. It was then where I was from, but we were able to get it anyway. But that kind of opened my eyes to the different styles of storytelling from different parts of the world. But when it came to queer things, it was, I'm kind of a little embarrassed to say it, but it was one called Man Meat. It had a series for many, many years. It was erotica, but it was different stories by artists that are still in the game. But it was different stories where it was mud people, where it was, in space, or just the regular somebody at the gas station. It was those type of stories that kind of opened the doors, not only to queer life or to gay life, but just kind of how people told these types of stories. And how it could be very, dirty, and how it could be kind of tasteful dirty, and what have you. There's so many different things. So from scary stories in the dark all the way up to Wendy, and really got into great stories. Yeah, different stories, different types of stories from different people all over.
My first anthology that I read was actually the Iron Circus Smut Peddlers, if you're familiar with them. And to be honest, just wow, they've just paved the way for just anthologies and ways that those work in general. And one of the things about it is talking a little bit about narrative with it. One of the reasons, like erotica, you were talking about the stories, Victor, in it, is that especially when you're dealing with marginalized people, having them in comics where they're stories as opposed to one-up, pin-up images gives them a character, and it takes away some of that objectification aspect or fetishization, maybe, depends on the comic, but by telling the stories behind the people involved with it, it feels like that's the way you can avoid those. And that's something, going back to that point, that seeing Smut Peddler do that and how it could be done, that was really inspiring, and probably why erotica is the way I've done.
I would say, for my first experiences with anthology is actually a very sort of natural form in the UK, because a lot of our comic growing up, the Beano, the Dandy, 2000 AD, kids grow up with anthology in the UK, so it's a much more sort of natural format than it is in some other markets. but it's also the sort of the preeminent format, I think, for a lot of independent comics, for a lot of the stuff that I would see at festivals and conventions, places like TCAF here in Toronto. You would see people like Spike Protman, Joe McGill, Spray Monster, Tanika Stotts, like Kel McDonald. Year after year, these are the people who are giving a platform through their anthology work to so many creators. It's become one of the primary ways that we expand both the creative platform and we expand the audiences.
And that's great. That's just right on the nose for the last question we have from our audience that we can fit in today. So as you're wrapping up, if everyone can share where we can become your next biggest fan, where we can follow you and find out all the juicy details about all the amazing things you put out in the world, please go ahead and say that. But also, if you can touch on sort of that direction it was going. The final question was, do you think anthologies succeed in helping readers expand their reading palette, helping us read about the experiences of people that don't look like us, or for those of us who aren't usually represented, seeing the breadth of representation within a single form or category? I know that's a big question to end on, but try to answer as succinctly as you can. And we did go over a little bit because we started a little late, but we'll wrap up now. And thank you again so much to everybody who's been on this panel. Thank you.
Maybe we can go in order to wrap it up. Yeah, definitely, absolutely a diversity of narratives. I think for me personally, it introduced me to a diversity of styles, all the different ways that I could make art, because I think if you grow up only looking at one form of art, or you get told by like your Eurocentric and white supremacist tool that this art is valuable and this art isn't, and then you start reading independent comics and you see all these different styles and all these different forms, you're like, wait a minute, people enjoy this? People want to engage with this? My little scribbles mean something, they matter. My like strained forms, they matter. So I think that's really important, and anthologies can help us to colonize the way that we engage with styles of art and the types of comics even that we hold as more important than others, and the types of stories we hold more important than others. I'm really grateful to anthologies for that. You can find me mostly on Instagram. I got the Holy Hawk Moth. It's probably backwards, but it's just hard to say. Okay, great. I was a little weird. Yeah, I mostly use Instagram. I'm a really slow poster because fuck capitalism and fuck the algorithm, but I always post something hella long, so you just have to wait and you'll get some juicy, I promise. Yeah, and you can mostly find me there and love to interact with people there. I'm working on a bunch of projects right now. So like, especially right now is a good time to like slide and like see what I'm doing from this. It's about to pop off. So welcome. I'd be so excited to meet you. Introduce yourself. If you saw me on this panel, I'd love to meet you. Thank you so much.
I want to say that I definitely agree. I know so many people who they don't read in the sense of chapter books and things like that, but they would love to be a part of anthology to just read through them. Like that will draw them in, whereas trying to read a regular standard format book will not. I definitely feel like there is so much room to grow and so many more people to bring into this that I definitely see it being a big thing in the coming years. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram under Bear by Day. I just reopened my Instagram, so there's not much on it. I think I have like 16 followers, so it's pretty quiet. Mostly active on Twitter. Feel free to connect. Feel free to ask any questions. Yeah.
All right, I pretty much agree with what everybody said. So I will say that, as long as anthologies continue to challenge, continue to take us on journeys, I think it will always be popular. So that's something that I'm always hoping to see, and I'm always really looking forward to every year. You can find me on Twitter. I am Wonderman with 2 N's, 5. I talk a lot about politics, so I apologize now. But I also talk about comics, and I also talk about many different things that happen, especially the 80s, because I'm an 80s kid. Right now, I am working on a couple of things. I finished one of my graphic novels, um, and it's been edited by Steam. You know who Steam? Steam, thank you so much for that help. But Spring Floor it was my first graphic novel. This is my second, and it's the follow-up to Spring Floor. And I'm also working on a YA novel that is focusing on Black queer witches, or warlocks. I even changed the name, so they're not even called witches and warlocks. They're called Manju. And it's called Sons of Midnight and Shade, and I'm very excited for it. It's a lot of writing. I just hit over 50,000 words 2 days ago, but we still gotta keep going. So that's me, and again, you can find me on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram. His name is Victor. I do a lot of posts of myself, but also other things.
So yeah, to answer the question, I think we find it very easy in comics to find a thing we love and just stick in that channel. And that's the great thing about anthologies is, go to an anthology that features a creator that you love, or a style or a genre that you love. Use that as a jumping off point to find other people, because that's what it's about. It's it takes a community to build these things, and that's the strength of anthologies, and we need to support that. You can find me on Twitter at Wheeler. That's my surname, Wapeeler. Shoutout is on Twitter at ShoutoutComic. I'm going to hold it up again. And the website, if you want to pick up a copy, is shoutoutanthology.com. You might be able to order through your local comic store as well. The strength and weakness of Kickstarter-supported books is that anyone can publish a book, but getting distribution is always going to be a nightmare. So please support anthologies. You can't reach through bookstores, unfortunately.
That's another panel in itself. Distribution for indie presses, yes. I mean, to answer the question thing going in, I think it's so interesting for publishers like Toronto Comics to do different anthologies of different subjects, and Kickstarter does a thing now where if they release a new kit, people backed previous ones from that person gets binged, like, oh, maybe you should check out this comic. So I'll be really interested. I hope that fan bases that I've built up over the years, I can do anthologies. That means that each time people who maybe wouldn't have seen this one would have a look. So you can find my work on Twitter, Tab Kimpton. My website is discordcomics.com, which, not like the chat thing, I've been sitting on that URL for over a decade now. And my next anthology, I'm currently in the middle of gathering together one called Ambrosia, which is a erotica again. It's a trans-masculine and non-binary erotic comics. And we're currently accepting submissions for the sibling anthology to that, Nectar, which is trans femme and non-binary comics as well. So really looking forward to, this is something that I really hope to bring out more of those in years to come, because, hopefully people are going to like what they read.
Awesome. Thank you again to all of our program participants for our very first panel today. And hopefully those of you that have a Discord will join us on the Discord server after the panel. I think there's a few people who are excited to hear your social media, where they can follow you again. So please post those on Discord, and you have a welcome audience excited to intermingle with you. And we will take a quick break, and when we come back, we will start our next and last panel before the awards. This is our small to mid-size press panel. So we'll be right back in about 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Hang in there. Welcome back, everyone. We appreciate you sticking with us. And we have a wonderful panel from not our anthology group, so we will update that information right now. And we have our small to mid-size press trailblazers. And we're excited to hear all the stories that they have to share with us today. So I'm going to kindly step out and let them shine. And with no further ado, please meet your panelists.
Hi, I'm Veronique M. Houbois. I was one of the judges for this category, and I'm a queer trans cartoonist and critic and consultant and general e-girl. So party, that's me.
Nice, amazing, hard to follow that. My name is Gabi Mendit. Queer cartoonist as well. I've done a lot of very small self-publishing, and I'm a finalist. That's right. For my book Lemonade Summer, which was a collection of short queer stories, mainly books at youth, but also for everyone, because that's what I do. I love making short queer stories for just everyone. That's me.
My name is Melanie Gilman. I'm another finalist for this year's book, Stage Dreams, which is a lesbian Western graphic novel. And they, them pronouns for me. I'm a queer and non-binary cartoonist, and very excited to be here.
Great. And lastly, I'm Noella Whitney. I was a judge this year for this category, and I am an illustrator and comic artist, and I was a 2018 short form winner. That's about it.
Cool. So some short comics, huh?
Yeah. And mostly short comics. Sorry.
So it's
sorry. There's a bit of lag here, so it's like, all right. Sorry, did you stop? Did I stop? Can you hear me? Sorry.
It's just like when you're watching the news and you see them standing there, and so we'll be respectful to leave some space due to the little bit of lag that might be going on. So we'll be respectful of that. To get things started, one of the things we tend to organize the awards by format. So sort of the easiest way that I find to get started with these conversations is what is unique about working as or working with a small to mid-sized press that allows you to do the work that you want to do, or on the judge's side, what is it about that small to mid-sized press area of creation that attracts you to want to be part of the judging panel, to want to think about what makes that area the best of the best.
I can speak to that a little bit, if no one minds. But working with a small press has been really amazing because, for one, the small press that I worked with was the passion project of a friend, a close friend, who I went to school with. And so just having that very personal level, I was able to really discuss what I wanted out of my project, out of Lemonade Summer, and just have it understood completely. I have limited experience working with mainstream publishers, but I just know that the overhead isn't so crazy. It's being a queer creator, it's important that I get across exactly my perspective and the perspective of the people around me in the queer community as honestly and as genuinely as possible. And so I was able to say exactly what I needed with these stories and not compromise anything for maybe a more general audience. Because partly I knew that it was going out to a queer audience because I was writing for them. And anyone who wasn't part of the queer audience of the community would see something more real, I think. And that's something I value so much with that experience.
I had kind of a similar experience with mine, where one of the things that initially attracted me to working with small press publishers when doing queer stories and trans stories is that you can sometimes find a little bit more personal attention in a way, and a little bit of like wiggle room in terms of editorial and people being willing to take a chance on a story which maybe doesn't immediately seem like it's going to have a ton of like mainstream appeal. Though it's interesting too, because I think that that's changing very quickly at the mainstream level in comics publishing, especially when we're looking at like kids and YA comics right now. So it's interesting because everything is in flux, but I do still think that there's a really important space that the small press occupies in terms of queer and trans storytelling, where it's there to support creators who oftentimes have been kind of pushed aside by mainstream presses, and to create spaces for them where they can tell authentic stories, and stories that don't necessarily have to have their primary goal being like extreme mass marketability. So yeah, it's interesting. Different sectors of the publishing industry for different types of stories out there.
From a judging perspective, like I wasn't really sure what category I was going to come in on, because like a lot of my career, especially like as a critic, has been like the super mainstream, the direct marketing, definitely like the big two, like DC and Marvel. And like, I read around different things, right? But the striking thing, which also made it such a challenging and daunting category to judge, was the absurd level of diversity. And I mean this in absolutely every single sense. I mean, just the two comics we're talking about here, if you want to look at like diversity in terms of inclusion, like those are huge, big deals, right? Like you guys are doing amazing, amazing things. Cannot overstate that. But like stylistically, we had stuff that was down from like zine level things. Like we had an entry from Carter Monier's Diskette Press, like Emma Kane's Transposed to Town. And then we have like more kind of book market stuff. And then we had things that were like very kind of like, I would call it like direct market style, because it's not like superhero comics, but you still know that like Image, Dark Horse, they kind of play in similar formats and styles. So you would have like this like big broad cyberpunk story, and then you'd have these little personal auto bio stories, and then you would have like some Lost Bros in there, like literally, and then like Simon Hanselman and like the whole like life side of things. So you're just like, it was almost like everything in comics really was being was being represented. You get Horror Killer in there too, and it's just, it was such a cornucopia, because if you're doing like full mainstream level, then you're going to be doing like Marvel, Image, DC, like the big stuff you kind of know, but also like the range of audiences, because y'all are more like YA and kids stuff, right? But again, like Transposed to Town, definitely a lot more adult, and like more of like the action titles and stuff. So it's just kind of like, it was so cool to get out of like what I had been, I don't want to say stuck into, but what I've been like so laser focused on, to just get this full like re-immersion into like the complete scope of what people are making right now. It was a blessing, a huge blessing to participate in.
Yeah, and kind of bouncing off of that, I feel like just the length that we're looking at for the books, and for these comics, it's that length. It's you can tell a full story in there. You can get like really, really deep into it. Like I've obviously have like your 10 pages, your short form comics, and they can be really poignant, but they can't really get into the meat of it. And with small to mid-size press books or publications, they can be any length. Honestly, they could be any length, anything more than, I think it was, what was the limit, like 12 pages or something for the short format. Yeah, you can make them 60, 80, 100, 200 pages, and you can get as deep as you want them. And also, and because of that, because there's such variation in the length, of course you're going to get a different variety of types of stories, because some kinds of stories take more pages to tell than others, and even like Lemonade Summer, it is a bunch of short comics, but when it's all collected connected, it creates this longer narrative about this world, about these characters, and because it's multiple comics about the same characters, compared to Melanie's book, where it's the same two characters in a continuous storyline. Like, yeah, it was very judge. Like, with how do you quantify how do you quantify all these different styles? How is this one better than this one, or more put together than this one? So, and also because small to mid-sized publishers, yeah, you have like Oni Press in there, and you have like Dark Horse, and those are like, they're not big too, but they're well-known names. They've been around for years. Yeah, compared to like Diskette Press, compared to like what was it, Piao? I don't know how to pronounce it. Piao Press or whatever. Yeah, those are smaller prints that have been around less than a decade. But they're all putting out like similar level of work, and it's just it's cornucopia. It's a smorgasbord of all these different kinds, and it's just great to see. It's always such a fun challenge.
Just to jump off on that, here's a little bit of a life hack if you are a queer cartoonist and you're going to be submitting to this category in the future, particularly if you're submitting a graphic novel, because like you said, some of these were like short anthology things, short stories or collections or whatever, but like sometimes you'll run into, because we have like a certain segment of them we can look at so we can see everything. So it's like if you have a larger form comic, and not every single page of your comic is queer, because like speaking for the finalists that are here, like you could pick out any 3 pages and you'll get it, right? And it's fine, because like that's not always necessarily the focus of your comic, and that's not disqualifying. But like, please, whether you're the creator or like the editor publisher submitting for it, make sure that the chunk we're seeing is a relevant one, because like obviously I don't want to like say who, but there was a couple of submissions in there where it was like, I really, really want to do this comic. It looks dope. But the first 50 or whatever pages, like the segment that I've got, doesn't get to it. And it's just like, because either you know who the creator is, the publisher, whatever. Yeah. You know there's going to be something good in here, but it's just like, it's not there. So like, make sure that you show us that the whole thing isn't just like rainbows and stuff on every single page. Then because we want to see what you're at in your career.
And actually about the I was a judge for this category last year, which is why I like to be in this category again. The reason that last year's winner won was because they took out, I think it was Meal by Diliconti. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I'm probably butchering your last name. Diliconti. I don't remember. I was right. The reason that book won was because I don't know who it was, if it was Blue, if it was their editor. They took out the relevant pages, and they showed the relevant pages. And even though, I jumped around in the story a little bit, it showed me exactly how this book is relevant to this category that they're applying. Basically applying for this award for. And that, it was because they took out those pages. And I was like, when I read it, I was like, this is jumping around a little bit, but it was all the queer parts, and it showed exactly how the characters were queer and why it mattered why they were queer and like what the statement was. Even if it was an entire book or sequential, ironically, even if it wasn't sequential, it still showed me, exactly how this book, why that book should win, and it did. So, there were so many submissions this year, and I was like, I know this, but you're not showing me the queer section of it, and therefore I can't judge you in the way that I want. So a little heartbreaking. People, please edit your submissions.
Yeah, to clarify oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, that's pretty good advice in general for any sort of, like, awards or art grants or anything that you're applying to. Like, look at what what are they actually looking for in the directions, and try to target the work that you're sending. So you're not just sending your strongest pages, but also the pages that are going to speak to the requirements of that thing that you're applying for. So just, tuck that in your back pocket. Any cartoonists listening to this who are interested in like applying for awards or grants or anything like that, it kind of boils down to the same thing at the end of the day.
Right, that's a great way of putting it. For anyone that is not aware, the awards generally limits around 32 pages for submissions outside of anthologies, just to make sure that we are valuing the time of those judges. So it is a little less like see my creation as a whole, and a little bit more like maybe portfolio submission as a way to think about it.
Yeah.
Actually, I hadn't thought of that. That's really good.
So, I mean, you've mentioned already that the variety of publishers, because it is small to mid-size, that, publishers like Dark Horse still feel in that space, even though some of us may feel like they probably fit more in mainstream. And so far, we've been allowing publishers to self-identify. As judges and as people who are submitting, what do you feel about that? I mean, I'm kind of using this as a self-serving thing to think about the awards for the future. Does that feel like a level playing field, or is that how much do the judges take that into account in terms of how much weight they give to each piece that they see? How do you handle that, or how do you feel about that as your competitors?
I mean, comics is a weird space.
Go ahead, Emma.
Comics is a really weird space, and I think actually Dark Horse is a really good example to kind of point out how weird that space is. Not to get too far into the weeds, but like before the Marvel Disney purchase, Dark Horse had a lot more like big licenses. So they had Star Wars, right, and they've had Alien, I think, at various times. Maybe they still do, or they're hashing that out with Marvel right now because of the Fox purchase, haha, and just stuff like that. But it's like, and like Gerard Way makes like My Chemical Romance comics for them, but he also makes Umbrella Academy, right? And like there's a whole tier of creator-owned and creator-run comics at Dark Horse, right? Because like that company started with like Sin City and Hellboy, like where Frank Miller and Mike Mignola came to play, right? So even within Dark Horse, there's tiers. Even within DC, well, sorry, not anymore. God, sorry, it sounds like I'm going and I don't mean to, but like back in the day, there was this thing called Vertigo, right? And that was a tier of creator-owned things. So like, what was the circulation for the Invisibles versus like Animal Man, Doom Patrol, Batman, and like especially the way that DC has busted itself up now, it's not necessarily where there's lower circulation creator-owned things and higher circulation superhero things. There's like the YA and print and that kind of stuff. So to me, it's a weird thing because like I kind of do like the diversity and the competition of kind of allowing maybe say Dark Horse to compete in those waters, because the judging pool that we have, at least the one that we had this year, is kind of looking beyond the surface level polish of this to see deeper dynamics. So I think that like, I don't know, because there's like one or two other awards that kind of are in our general sphere, but not really, that have one big category, and it's like there's a Marvel comic with a token gay character in it, and it's going to compete against the entire field, and you're just like, well, they're just going to Harvey Weinstein it, they're just going to lobby for it and buy it, and you're like, okay, cool, fun, so we don't have to worry about that so much here, and that's why like the mainstream tier takes that out. So I think it's good, but it's weird. I mean, if you wanted to break it up more within the mid-range, like for size, I would look at circulation, maybe, to be like, what's the audience size if you want to do that? But I think a more pressing concern is to break out a YA category. Because the hardest decision-making process for me was, how the hell do I judge Lemonade Summer or Stage Dreams against Trans Girls Hit the Town? how the F you do that, right? Because trying to scroll to town, it's a very adult comic aimed directly at that, right? Whereas you guys are speaking to two different, well, I mean, like the same audience, but a little bit different, right? And like starting at a different range. So it's kind of like, how effectively do they communicate with these audiences? So to me, it's kind of like, especially because YA is breaking out as such an incredible space for LGBTQI representation, and that includes like DC, like the Harley Quinn Breaking Glass, like that Mariko Tamaki Steve Pugh freaking masterpiece, and that like Aqualad comic that they got like what's her face to draw, the amazing French cartoonist who's like my actual hero in life. But yeah, so you know what I mean. So like to me, if we were gonna split or break around, you could look at circulation numbers, but I would maybe definitely look at breaking out to like a YA category.
It absolutely.
Sorry. What I really liked about judging this is that it kind of evens the playing field between, you know, say the more established publishers and the newer publishers. Like it, because you think like, oh my god, like or Image or Dark Horse, oh my god, great, they're great work, and they really like you know that if it's that publisher, it's going to be something that's good usually. Yeah, and all these smaller publishers, all these like, I guess for the lack of a better phrase, startup publishers, who are these like Gabby's friend, like it's just a small passion project. And I know at least like 3 other people with passion projects as well. Shout out to Zach and Paloma. Yeah, and all it gets everybody okay. Even though you're at this big publisher, let's take a step back. Let's kind of ignore that and see generally like see what the overall quality of the school is. And comparing the 2 years, the quality this year is definitely higher, and that's making me really excited for the future of this, because if it's getting better, it's improving, then that means that we have more voices coming in, and we're having a lot more conversations about what can be done with this. And it's good. It's good. It's a very and thank God that the mainstream is a separate category, because this is like I think as far as standalone like big what's the word when you have like a big story, when you know
Long format?
this is the category for that long format. No, when you make when you're like, this is my work, this is my crowning jewel of my that one magnum opus. Sorry, my brain is still a little weird today. When you're making a magnum opus, this and you're not big too, then this is your category. It's really nice to see how people interpret that. So yeah. Sorry, who was talking? I interrupted someone in the beginning. Gabby, was that you?
I was just going to say that it definitely is daunting to be up against other larger, well, not big 3 or even this big YA, if that's my category, publishers, because of the resources that they do have compared to the resources that I may have, even though I appreciate everything that I've gotten from my small press and the attention that they were able to give to this project because of the small size of it. The resources are different, you know. We don't have as much time and money to put into the projects that we really do care about. So the products may come out different. And of course the reach will be different too, because I know that the Anthology panel was talking about Kickstarter and the breadth that it may reach and the things that it has and the things that it takes. It can only reach a very specific audience, which is the ones that it's advertised to, the ones that we self-advertise to, and the backers who back it. So it's, when talking about circulation, it's a lot of groundwork for the creator and the publisher and the resources. Whereas it's difficult to say too with these mid-range publishers. The lesser known you are, maybe the less resources they may put into circulation of those creators as well, because bigger names may merit more publication. But there's still a distance that we may not be able to reach as the small publishers, the startup publishers, I say. So it's daunting. It is daunting being up against them, but it's also an honor and a privilege to be all of us with this crazy wide diversity to be included together in one category. Though I do agree it might be nice to have a YA section because it's such a boom right
now. Yeah. Going off of what Gabby was saying, like one of the really interesting stumbling blocks that's facing especially small press graphic novel publishers right now is things like school and library distribution, which has to go through, I think it's the Baker and Taylor catalog right now, and you can't get that level of distribution unless your publisher is putting out a minimum number of books per year. I think it's around 10 books per year, and that's like graphic novel size books, not like mini comics or like floppy comics. So that can be a significant hurdle for a lot of the smaller press publishers, and that also means that there are like very wide markets that are really thriving in comics right now. Like libraries are so excited about comics right now, which is wonderful, but we're still facing that stumbling block for the smaller presses who aren't able to hit that like volume level in terms of the number of books that they're putting out every year to get that level of distribution and be able to reach those audiences. And I think that's especially important for books for younger readers, especially because if you are a kid in school, then maybe you might not have like a credit card and the money on hand to be backing things like Kickstarters, but you can go to your public library and find books. So it is important for us as queer creators to be, actively thinking about like how do we work within those distribution channels and how do we try to widen access to those distribution channels, because that's going to get our books into places where, in particular, like young and low-income readers are going to be able to get to them. So that's an evolving issue in comics right now, and I'm very happy every time that I hear news of another small press comics publisher who's like, we did it, we're like at the level where we could get into libraries now, we could get that distribution, but still have a ways to go. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch as comics history rolls on from here.
Yeah, and it's really I never had thought about it in terms before, maybe like 2 years ago, that libraries are one of the largest purchasers of books in I guess most countries, and yeah, because they'll buy like 12 copies of the same book, and in terms of sales as a creator, like that's a lot from one purchaser. That's a lot, and that's just for like one system in like one community. And then you think of like all the cities out there, and if all of them are buying like 5-10 copies of your book, that's why I'm just talking within the context of America, where I live. That's a lot of books. That's a lot of books. That's not even counting like people buying personal copies. So.
Yeah, and that's a particular reason why it's important for us to
Sorry, Emma, did you have something to say?
To like protecting libraries, and look at the ways that say like Amazon is kind of attacking the ebook market, making it harder for libraries to get copies. But it's like, I remember talking to, kind of making a joke to Mariko Tamaki a while ago about like, didn't you have a book that was like banned in Florida or whatever? I think it was this one summer, right? And stuff like that. And you look at like the ways that the distribution can get limited. And it's just kind of like the tough things to try to be like pushing representation of why comics is doing so well, but then it gets targeted at the library level. I mean, I remember there was an anthology. I was interviewing the editors for the Artists Against Police Brutality anthology. And there was this one page that we were talking about, and it was like a gay couple that was getting busted up by the cops for like making out in public or whatever. And the editors were like, this was a really, really tough page for us because they were like, we recognized the intersectionality of this issue, and we really wanted to acknowledge that, like, obviously there's queer, Black people and people of color who face both of these, but also, in every respect of the importance of that overlapping concern. But they're also sitting there where it's like, we know what the library situation, the book publishing situation is. And the conversation was, if we put this page in here, we might not make it into libraries in Florida. And it's just these ridiculous, terrible calculuses you have to have in your head when you're publishing this stuff. Like, this was an anthology that was like inspired by the Eric Garner book, the grand jury declining to prosecute the cops that killed him, and they have to think about, do we let this gay content into the comic and risk our distribution in Florida? Like, it's ridiculous, all the levels. But it's just you kind of have to have this like meta sense of the wider like politics around libraries and book distribution, all of these things. You just have to have longer antennas and a bigger awareness of the world when you're creating queer content, or when you're critiquing it or judging it. And just kind of like, there's so many more concerns that you have to deal with, right?
Bouncing off of that as well, even considering the kind of content that will be considered adult or will be considered YA is difficult when you're making queer content because of just the way it's received just across even just the US. Maybe I live in California, it might be a little more accepted to put more queer content into younger stories, but depending on what you show and what you don't show, it may be, no matter how natural, no matter how simple and understandable it may seem to us as queer people, that content may just get you bumped up to a different category when you're trying to reach someone younger, or when you're trying to reach a wider breadth of readers. It's a hard call to make.
Well, I was just talking to Emmett Helen, who's a trans man cartoonist who has like a Riot Girl comic coming out, but we were kind of talking about just kind of the bizarre fallout of the whole like Batman stick incident. That I guess it just really caused like a huge crackdown at all of DC in terms of what you could show. And I kind of mentioned how I was like, how difficult that would be if you can't show a penis in any, DC Black Label comics. Then like, can you reclaim the depiction of trans women's bodies of that publisher? No, you can't, right? It's there's all these things, right? And allegedly, I don't know if this is true or not, that's why SFSX moved from Vertigo to Image, right? And so it creates all of these different situations. But like, his response to that, he's like, well, he's working more towards like webtoon and stuff like that now, and he's saying that like, if he has a trans male character who like hasn't gotten top surgery or anything like that, he can't show this male character topless and maintain a certain audience level because of what Instagram would call female presenting nipples, right? So you get into these binds where it's just like trans bodies just get trapped in all these stupid matrices that are just so cis heterocentric. And the YA market was brutal for that, because like I remember working at like a big bookstore in like the mid 2000s, and like the manga boom was happening, and they're like, okay, put this comic in like the 9 to 12 section, and I got into a flip through and I was like, there's boobs in this, and they're like, well, corporate wants us to put it there, and we put it in the other section, then right? And I was like, okay, we're gonna get some letters from parents over this one, right? So it's just, yeah.
I feel like that's a great point. Sorry, did anyone want to add to that?
Oh, I have one fun anecdote about all this stuff. So Stage Dreams hasn't been challenged too much that I've heard of, at least. It's possible it has, and the stories just haven't made it back to me. But
great.
Before this, As the Crow Flies has been challenged quite a bit, and I have like I hear the weirdest stories from teachers about this. They'll send me things like a parent forwarded me a blog post that went through your entire book and counted how many curse words were in it as a way to challenge it. And they included words like gay as being a curse word. So strange things like that happen. Though I also feel like the small press, if we're looking specifically at books that are also existing in online spaces, like webcomics that later make it into print form as graphic novels, I do think that there can sometimes be a small advantage to that path when we're talking about things like books being, censored and suppressed at schools and libraries, especially for As the Crow Flies. It's always been very fun for me when a kid will come up and tell me oh yeah, our school removed your book from our library, but it's a webcomic. So we'll get those books into their hands one way or another. We'll find a way.
Those gay curse words.
Yeah. So there's so much you've been talking about in the go ahead.
I just small comment about that. I find it very, very funny that so enthusiastic about it's a curse word, it's a boo. They to learn about because of the societal norms, they're not allowed to see it. So it's I find it very endearing, honestly. That they're so eager, but we can't. It's a little heartbreaking. Can't get that. As much as we would like to, as much as we ourselves would have loved to see stuff like this when we were younger, and been introduced to it, we can't, and we can't pay it forward. That's a little heartbreaking. Sorry, go ahead, Nina. Oh, sorry, Gabby. I thought Nina was talking.
Go ahead, Gabby. Yeah. So Gabby, say your piece, and then we will have to start the wrap up process. But go for it.
Well, to bring it back to small publishing, since it's been, I feel, in my opinion and in my experience, such a grassroots kind of approach to comics. I know that I've had family friends who've reached out and said, "Oh, my child or this child that I know has, is experiencing some things and has some, feelings and that are, they wouldn't say queer, but queer. And I've heard of your book, or your daughter did this book, or your granddaughter, and just so even though it has a smaller range, it's we're getting the books into their hands. We're getting these ideas and these different approaches to normalcy, to what should be normal, what should be normalized on a smaller scale, but on a very important smaller scale.
Yeah, I think that these are all really good
points. Something's better than nothing. So.
I'm so excited about everything that this group has been talking about this entire hour. There's so many things in here that are my personal jam. YA, the history of censorship of comics in America. I'm just going to do a quick shout out. If you don't know what the Comic Code Authority was, then you really, really, really need to look up what the Comic Code Authority was, because it shapes so much about American comics specifically, and how fear can totally redefine an entire industry. So, I want to talk to all of you after this, but I have to get ready for the awards, which are coming up next. So hopefully we'll stay in touch. And we've been thinking about a YA category for a while now, just considering lots of various logistics in terms of what does that mean. Does having a YA category mean that the other categories are not YA friendly, or not kid friendly, and kind of trying to make sure that we balance, and we want to push against the feedback that being queer isn't for kids, but how to best do that. So thank you for your input for that, because I will definitely be considering these pushes for a YA category for next year when we start planning. And I want to thank all of our, and I've got lots of juicy stories I'll have to tell you all about working in YA with kids stuff and queer stuff in the future. to hold my
You'll have to
tongue.
pull up a chair and like have a drink. It'll be great.
It'll be fantastic. Yeah, we'll do like a happy hour. So, anyway, thank you so much for your time and your efforts, both in being here for the panel and submitting and judging in particular. It's not easy, and we appreciate the effort of everyone involved on all sides. Before we wrap up and get ready for the awards, which will start at 4 o'clock, I want to make sure that everyone here gets a chance to let everyone know how can we become your next biggest fan, how can we follow you, see what you're up to, and we'll go in the same order that everyone introduced themselves. We'll be excited to hear how we can follow up.
Awesome. Just one tiny little postscript before I give you my deeds was that like the experience of judging this, like I kind of opened at the beginning and said, you know, it kind of reconnected in comics, but it's like I want to say maybe 2 months into HRT, maybe like 1.5 when we started judging. And, you know, so running into, especially like trans girls at the town was a big deal for me because there are all these great conversations that you don't ever see, but also like just the emotional changes of the medication were things that you never hear talked about. And I was like, this is a different unheard conversation. But then I was just like, bitch, wait, you can draw. It's time for you to actually like step up and start making comics because you haven't done anything since you wrote that one script for Love is Love for DCIDW, like after Pulse shooting. So now I'm like over 80 instances into a daily strip that's extremely adult and hosted on OnlyFans, but is also slowly coming out on other platforms. So like just getting to see it and getting to reconnect with my own community within comics just made me make that leap to finally becoming primarily a cartoonist. So like just getting to engage with your own community within the industry is such a hugely profound thing that is going to change and reshape my life for the next like fucking decade. But yeah, so I'm Veronique Emma Bourgeois. The best way to find me is on Twitter at EMMAHOUXBOIS. There's a link tree in my bio so you can find all the little things that I do everywhere else. But yeah, I have a Patreon that's solely doing like a trans studies course. And I'm like solely posting some of my comics and collections of them to like itch.io and stuff like that. But that's me, and thank you for your time. And like so excited for the awards coming up.
All right. So I've been Gabi Mendez, and I'm mostly on Twitter and Instagram, I guess, both under Hobble Schmobble, which is HOBBLESHMOBBLE. And I post art and I talk more on Twitter and working on some fun stuff, working on my own comics and maybe some pitches that maybe you'll see. Who knows? But that's where you can follow up with me.
And best places to find me online are probably like the usual social media platforms. I think I'm Mel Gilman on Twitter and Tumblr, and M Gilman on Instagram. I've been very quiet on all those social medias lately because I'm working on a ton of books which are like unannounced right now, so I just haven't been able to say anything about what I've been working on. So there's a lot of posts about me like hunting mushrooms in the woods right now. The most clear content about
Ideal. Very ideal. Cool. And I guess lastly, again, I'm Noella Whitney, Butch Lesbian Cartoonist. You can find me on Twitter at no_WHIT. Links to like everything else that I do is there. My Instagram, same handle. My Gumroad, my Patreon, my website, everything's there. And as a project, I'm not working on creating anything right now because I actually just moved back from Japan like a month and a half ago. Still getting my feet back on, but I made it. But actually, right before coronavirus happened, I finished the sequel comic to my Prism Award-winning comic, and I will be releasing that in the next couple of weeks. And that's I'm very, very excited about that. And the second one is packed, so bigger wallop than the first. I can can guarantee you that based on feedback. So, yeah, that's about it from me.
Awesome. Thank you again. Oh, was there any last? No problem. Okay. All right. Thank you again to everybody that was part of this panel, that has been part of this whole weekend celebration. All of the videos will be up to view after the fact. So if there's anyone you want to share them with, who this would be meaningful to share these conversations, for them to hear them, please feel free to pass the videos along and spread them far and wide. You know, the whole point here is pushing things forward and creating more of an opportunity for that education and empathy and commiseration. So we appreciate all that everyone involved, from viewers to finalists to judges, to our co-chair and our planning committee. Thank you to everyone. And we will be right back at 4 o'clock. We will start the actual Prism Awards. Finally time to see what the cream of the crop has come through. And we're also, I'm just going to reiterate one last time, we say this all the time as part of the Prism Awards, you know, the fact, those that made it to be finalists, it's so much work and so much dedication to get there, and we really appreciate all of that. You know, if we when we get a bigger budget, maybe we'll just give everybody lots of awards all the time. So we definitely appreciate all of our finalists' work. So as part of the award ceremony tonight, you will not only see acceptance speeches from the award winners themselves, but you will get some really impactful words from each and every one of our finalists tonight. So make sure to tune in and catch everything. All right, thanks so much. Welcome to the 2020 Prism Awards presented by the Cartoon Art Museum
and Prism Comics
and Queer Comics Expo.
We're so thankful that you guys came out today. We're also thankful to everybody that submitted for the Prism Awards this year. We're also incredibly thankful to the staff of judges that helped us out this year. But more to talk a little bit about what the Prism Awards are about is Ted Abenheim. So I'll hand it over to you, Ted.
Thank you. My name is Ted Abenheim. I'm the president of Prism Comics. I go by he and him. The Prism Awards was founded by Prism Comics, the Cartoon Art Museum in San Francisco, and the Queer Comics Expo to promote excellence in queer comics. Comics by queer writers, comics that present positive, innovative, challenging, diverse representations of LGBTQ characters and LGBTQ stories. Normally we do this presentation at San Diego Comic-Con, Comic-Con International San Diego, but since we're all quarantining at home and hopefully staying safe and reading lots of comics, we're bringing this to you digitally. The mission of the awards is to promote diversity and excellence in both fiction and nonfiction comics, from webcomics to indies and small press all the way up to mainstream. The nominations and the awards are voted on by a diverse panel of judges from the industry, comics creators, journalists, writers, librarians, educators, people in the know about comics. And to tell us more about the judging process, we have our Prism Awards chair, Gladys Ochoa.
Hey everyone, I'm Gladys Ochoa. I go by she, her. I'm Latinx, an illustrator, and one of the Queer Comic Expo's coordinators. This is my first year being the chair. So being a chair this year has been an honor and a pleasure to be with a huge, diverse group of people. It's also been quite an adventure as a chair navigating through the hurdles of 2020, such as COVID-19. Leading that to online programming has been both a blessing and a curse. We had a late start and needed enough time for judges to deliberate, leading us to not being able to present the award on time for Comic-Con. And so with Comic-Con's blessing, we transitioned to expand the award ceremony into a longer event, which is why we're here. Yes. The Black Lives Matter movement was a wake-up call for us to get more judges of color. We're dedicated and inspired by the movement to provide more spaces for brown and indigenous people of color. The Prism Awards provide a source of community for me personally and a way to support queer creators. I had a lot of fun seeing just the amount of submissions and supporting others and their passions for their work. My experience as a queer person has always been the good old, am I queer enough? Going so far as asking the girl I was dating if I was queer, only to be answered, "You're dating? I think that's where the definitions of it." So now I feel less confused because of their words, but for that I'm forever grateful. So we would like to thank all of our judges for their time and work in making this happen.
Yes, we definitely want to thank our judges this year. It was immensely difficult work. We also want to let you guys know we're trying let everybody know that we are trying our best to ensure that we're making correct pronunciations for names. We want to apologize in advance just in case we have missed the mark. And we want to let you know that your work is no less appreciated. And we are really trying our best to make sure that we do you honor by making the correct pronunciation for names for judges. And with no further ado, I would like to thank our webcomics category, which starts with Jillian Pascasio of Alphabet Anthropoda, Rob McGonigal, the site editor at Panel Patter, Sean Coia, the reviewer at Panel Patter, Becky Hawkins of Super Butch, Randy Fisher, The Pride of Life, Nick Porter from Mega Sheen Podcast.
And for short form judges, May Rude, who's a journalist, E. Jackson from Flux, Svay Monster, The Beyond Anthologies, Heidi McDonald, editor-in-chief of Comics Beat, Brina Nunez, I Exist, Lawrence Lindell from Truth with Truth.
And from the small to mid-sized press category, we have Harry Connor from Fighting Home, Emma Hubois, of Transcription, Barry Deutsch of Ampersand, Nola Whitney to Measure, and Amanda Castillo from Mapmakers.
And from our mainstream publisher category, our judges are Brian Anderson of Stripling Warrior, Jack Bauer, a librarian from Berkeley Public Library, William O. Tyler of Cinephilia, Caden Phoenix of Jalisco, Greg A. Elisi of East Nana.
And for Anthology, Malak Lilly, The Boar King, Renetta Robertson, Hair Story, Nyla Magruder, Creaky Acres, Victor Kearney, Megashine Podcast, and Michelle Zwan, Permanent Alien, an Asian American Comics Anthology.
Thank you to all those judges for their immense hard work and for corresponding with us through emails all throughout the summer. I know, Gladys, that was both a challenge and a joy. And just as COVID has created many changes, there's one more change to the awards this year. In the past, the awards have been hefty blocks of wood with plastic comic book pages topped by a solid glass rainbow. While these awards were impressive and a lot of fun, they have been called some of the least phallic awards out there, which we had a fun time being proud of. And the awards just became sort of too immense to be able to continue to send out to the winners. In order to ensure that winners have something as quickly as possible where they can parade it around and celebrate their victory, we switched the design this year to become medallions. So these medallions are fabricated here in the Bay Area, and as with many spaces in California, we have been affected intensely by the fires and smoke traveling that so many of us are suffering from. With that, there's been a small delay in production, and we are going to make sure that these awards are completed before the end of the year. We want to make sure that the winners from tonight still get one more thing to look forward to before the end of 2020. And while we are also focusing on making sure that our winners get to celebrate sooner, we also want to make sure that we give honor to the finalists in these categories, even if they don't happen to win tonight. Their work is immense, their accomplishments are great, and we want to make sure that that is valued and acknowledged. So in addition to the acceptance speeches that you'll see tonight, you will also see words from each of the finalists in the categories talking about their experiences making these works that we can all continue to be inspired by. And with that, I don't want to hold this up any longer. I want to pass this over to Gladys Ochoa, our amazing chair, to introduce our first category.
Thank you so much. Yes, so we're going to go ahead and start with the webcomic category. And so this category is practically a comic that is primarily or initially published online, that is complete or ongoing. Yes. So the webcomic finalists are The Girl That Can't Get a Girlfriend by Mieri Hiranishi, Cafe Suada by Jade Sarson, and Magical Boy by The Cow. The winner for Best Webcomic is Magical Boy by The Cow.
Hello everyone. First off, I want to say thank you to everyone who makes the Prism Comics Award possible. It's an honor to be among so many talented fellow LGBT creators. Words cannot express how grateful I am to everyone who has supported me throughout my journey of creating Magical Boy, especially my partner CK and editor Brooke, who have both, kept me on my feet and been so encouraging when I had my doubts. I also can't forget my amazing colorist Dojo and my assistant Sarah, who both helped me create the series. Burnout is a serious thing, and I owe it to you all for making this possible through a team effort. Your skills, assistance, and support have allowed me to continue putting the magic in Magical Boy. And lastly, I want to thank my publisher Tapas for believing me and giving me my story a chance, and a platform to thrive on. Thank you. Overall, it's been a crazy experience creating Magical Boy. This is the first time since my childhood that I've attempted to make a serious, story-driven comic, but the story of Magic Boy is the one that I've been wanting to tell for a long time. I wanted to create a story about a hero, a teen trans man hero who embarks on a messy, outrageous, funny, and difficult, but ultimately rewarding journey that all readers, but especially trans men, can cheer for and relate to. There were parts of the story that were really difficult for me to write, and I know may have been hard for some readers to see as well, but it was really important for me to make the story as genuine and authentic as I could, because I want readers to see Max overcome those obstacles that all too many trans people have to face every day and succeed in spite of them. Coming out takes a lot of courage, but having courage doesn't mean immunity to self-doubt and vulnerability. So I want to acknowledge the strength as well as the challenges that are all part of coming out, and but also a big part of coming of age in general. It's been amazing to see how much love Max and the story are receiving, and I can't put into words how much it means when somebody tells me that they see themselves in Max, or that Magic Boy has given them strength. More than anything else, I want the story to inspire everyone to be true and love themselves. Yeah, so thank you for having me, and thank you again to my fans, my friends, and family for all the support. Be safe and have an amazing day.
ハロー元気？平西みえりです。彼女ができない女っていうエッセイ漫画を連載してます。なんと、この度、彼女ができない女がプリズムアワードでノミネートされました。プリズムアワーズはアメリカの NPO が開催している LGBTQ コミックスのための賞なんですけど、いやー、こんな素敵な賞にノミネートしてくださってありがとうございます。ありがとう。彼女ができない女は自分がいかに彼女ができないっていうのを書いた面白悲しいエッセイ漫画でして、漫画を描き続けられるようにいつも応援してくださってる読者様、ありがとうございます。ありがとう。他のノミネート作品も個性あふれる素敵なものばかりですので、ぜひ読んでください。どうもありがとうございました。
Hi, I'm Jade Sarson, the creator of Cafe Sawada. Can you believe I nearly didn't submit it because I didn't think it was queer enough? That's some internalized biphobia. So Cafe Sawada is about learning that there isn't one way to live your life. Everyone has different goals, and we should respect those differences. You see, when I started writing it 10 years ago, I couldn't fathom that some people don't have like this all-consuming specific thing that they want to do with their lives. Like some people just simply enjoy life for what it is, and that's important. So this comic is where I enjoy myself. It's my experimental baby. It's the place where I can say to myself, you want to try this? Go for it. It's a fun game of keeping the art consistent whilst playing around with like tools and techniques depending on my mood, my level of patience, and my desire for a challenge. And as I've grown, so has the comic. It started out as an homage to shoujo and sitcoms, which did their best to drill harmful cis-normative behaviours into me. And the early chapters regrettably reflect that. But as I became more aware of my gender identity, my sexuality, and healthy relationships, so too have my characters. And webcomics as a format is really special to me because there's no limits on this kind of representation. They've always had a much higher ratio of queer characters, especially in niche genres. More often than not, if you search for a fantasy or a mystery or what basically amounts to a coffee shop AU, you can guarantee there'll be healthy, happy queer characters. And unhealthy, unhappy, flawed ones, you know. The brilliant thing about having more queer characters is that you don't have to hold one up as this paragon of a role model. Like, they can all be explored as interesting individuals with, who'd have thunk it, different approaches to life. And that's one of the reasons I wanted my main character Geraldine to be bi or pan, depending on how you define it, like me. She's tea-obsessed, she's overdramatic, she's pay, she's a waitress with a dream, and she's slowly coming to terms with having feelings for someone so unlike her after years of being just pretentious, which is what drove her ex-girlfriend away. She's complicated, though. She's likable and unlikable, depending on who she's interacting with. She's not like a cliche device that you'd find in some stories, here to teach the other characters about sexual possibilities and then disappear into the queer ether. She's thirsty, like most people, but her story isn't about that. It's about learning respect. And she's grown, but she's not quite there yet. She's got a ways to go. And I'm truly grateful to be a Prism Awards finalist, because it's recognizing that my queer kids have grown into characters worthy of being noticed, even though they're not perfect. So, thank you very much.
I'm Lauren Sundell.
And I'm Brina Nunez.
And we make comics and are queer and stuff.
Yes, all of the above. Yeah, it's both our first time judging anything like this, but it's a huge privilege to do it for queer comics, especially with being in quarantine and not being able to be in comic conventions. But it's been a really wonderful expo experience, and to still feel connected by reading all this beautiful work by everybody.
Yep. And we're judging the short form comics, or we're judges for it, and we're announcing the finalists. The short form comic is a self-published or traditionally published comic of 32 pages or less. Entries to this category are a complete story, not an excerpt from a longer work.
And the short form finalists are In Search of Absent Pigments by Alex Awesome and Lynn Darrow, Pseudo Slut Transmission by Emma Jane, and One Day Out by Ina Bestari.
And the winner for Best Short Comic is... No. Correction. The winner for Best Short Form Comic is... No. Correction. We should do it together. 1, 2, 3.
The winner for Best Short Form Comic is... No! One Day Out by Ina Bestari. Yes! Congratulations! Congratulations to all of the amazing finalists that submitted their work to this year's expo.
And the folks that submitted too that aren't finalists. Y'all had some great comics. We really did read them all, if you're curious. We're up reading them. But yes, you should go celebrate, continue being queer, and continue making comics.
Hi, I'm Ina Bestari, the creator of the short comic One Day Out. I'm speechless and beyond grateful for this Prism Awards nomination, and honestly, I was not expecting it at all. I first wrote the comic because I felt isolated, especially after the 2016 anti-LGBT crackdown in my country, and I wanted to let other people like me know that they're not alone. It turns out that the comic resonated with many queers from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Muslim queers from all around the world. I remember only being able to work on the comic when my family members were all asleep, because we lived together and I couldn't risk getting caught. So yeah, it was pretty challenging, but knowing that other people like me find some solace in my work is what keeps me going. I would like to thank New Narrative for giving my comic a home, and Caris Lope for always being a thoughtful editor. Again, as a closeted queer person in a homophobic country, there's not many people I can celebrate this nomination with. So I would like to thank you all so much for being here with me.
Hello everyone, Emma Jane here. I was extremely not expecting this from this book. It's probably the scariest thing to release that I've ever released, which makes a lot of sense because it's a book about the terror of making yourself known to people you barely know. It came from an interesting time in my life. A lot of self-discovery and a lot of mistakes were made, but I am who I am because of it. I want to thank Diskette Press, as always, for printing this book and distributing it and hauling my butt to a bunch of comic shows through the past couple of years. It's meant the world to me, and they're such a great publisher. And I never thought I would be saying this, but thank you to all the shitty dating apps that I downloaded over the years. I actually don't know if I can cuss in this thing. If I'm not allowed to cuss. Sorry I said the word shitty. Bye!
Hello, everyone. I'm Noah Whitney, one of the judges for Small to Mid-Sized Press. I'm a cartoonist and illustrator with a focus on lesbian relationships as a way to figure out what it means for me to be a lesbian in this world. Mixed with my favorite flavors of mountain scenery, giant buff women, and werewolves. My comic, To Measure, was the 2018 short form category winner of these awards and included all those things, and so will the future second installments to cut. This year has been absolutely crazy, full stop. With the pandemic, the US election, and the modern civil rights movement of Black Lives Matter, plus handling the effects of those and countless other personal things in each of our lives, which for me included moving countries from Japan to the US, I looked for work that was uncompromising in this year's entries. Simply stating you exist is an extremely radical act, and one we're all familiar with, some in intersectional ways. For real beneficial change to occur, however, demanding respect is just the first step in the right direction. We need to push much further than that. The best comics this year did this in each their own way, whether it be through adventure, drama, childhood, or others. So I present to you your finalists for the best comic from the Small to Mid-Sized Press. A comic from the Small to Mid-Sized Press is a publishing house that does not identify as mainstream. The Small to Mid-Sized Press finalists are Lemonade Summer by Gabby Mendez, Trans Girls Hit the Town by Emma Jane, and Stage Dreams by Melanie Gilman. And the winner for Best Comic from the Small to Mid-Sized Press is Trans Girls Hit the Town by Emma Jane. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Hello everyone, Emma Jane here. Thank you so much for giving Trans Girls Hit the Town a Prism Award. This book has honestly changed my life and really was not expecting it to. This book only exists because I thought of a really stupid joke and I wanted to create a vessel with which to deliver the stupid joke. It turned into something a little bigger than that though. It was also around the time where I was frustrated with the lack of trans characters in comics, specifically trans people interacting with each other, and that's kind of why the book turned out the way it did. And after I released it, just a bunch of people told me how it gave them just strength and comfort in trying times. And that's probably the highest compliment that you can give an artist and a storyteller. So thank you so much, everybody. And also thank you, Diskette Press, who published the book and made it a real physical thing that you can read with your eyes. And just being a kick-ass publisher in general. Definitely work with them if you can. That's all I got. Thanks again. Bye.
Hello, this is Melanie Gilman. I just wanted to say thank you. Incredibly honored by this. And Thank you especially to the folks at Learner and my editor, Greg, who were advocates for this book and took a chance on me telling a weird disaster lesbian romance story set in Civil War era New Mexico. Really, for me, this book goes out to all of the queer and trans ancestors whose stories have been buried over time, or whose stories we only have fragments of, and all of the people who came before us whose names we no longer know because their records were deliberately lost over time. This book was a way to take fragments of those stories, which is sometimes the only stories that we have left, and try to weave them into a narrative whole as a way to imagine the lives of our queer and trans ancestors as being full and full of love, and not just being strictly narratives of hardship. And I hope that we as queer folks, we find ways in the year 2020 here to live loudly and to leave our own marks and make it as hard as possible for the history books of the future to try to forget our stories and forget our names. Thank you again. Deeply honored by this, and I'm so happy to have this recognition for my weird lesbian Western book. Thank you so much.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there. I was just trying to escape the summer heat wave, and I thought to myself, I could really use some lemonade. What's this? Lemonade summer? How refreshing! How delightfully queer! Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, on a somewhat serious note, thank you so much for this. I don't know how to explain how momentous it is and how big of a deal it is and what it means to me. As a queer artist, I just always make queer stories. I can't stop, both mundane and fantastical, because I want to populate worlds with people who were like me and my friends. Stories about people having crushes, stories about friends supporting each other. Diverse not because I'm making some special effort to do so, but because that's the way that the world is. And it just became increasingly important for me to make these stories specifically for queer kids. I feel like it's said a lot nowadays, but representation is everything. It is so important to me. And for kids who are like me, who needed to see themselves in their media, to just know that they were normal. And for kids who aren't queer, to see that things that are different from themselves don't make them not normal. It just adds more flavor. Just the things that we have the same are just bigger than what makes us different. And I just want to thank you so much for seeing this vision like I did, and just for recognizing it. Thank you so much. And I could have never gotten it done without my friends at Cowhouse Press, who also saw what I was trying to do and helped me make it a reality. So to everyone who was involved, and to everyone who got me here, and just everyone, thank you so much.
Hello, I'm William O. Tyler, queer comic creator. You may know me from such comics as Theater of Terror, Revenge of the Queers, which I co-edited last year with Justin Hall. But today I'm here as a judge, here to announce the winner of the mainstream comics category for the Prism Awards. I'm very excited and honored, as always, to help judge Prism. And I know our history as queer creators and in the queer comics genre is a little bit more independent and underground. So it's kind of exciting, pretty exciting to be able to announce a mainstream winner for this category. So without further ado, here are the finalists for the Mainstream Comics Prism Award. And again, this is a comic from a mainstream publisher published by a large publishing company. I'm going to be reading, so apologies if I mispronounce anything. But the mainstream finalists are Bloom by Kevin Panetta and Savannah Gonusho, Kiss Number 8 by Colleen A.F. Venable and Ellen T. Crenshaw, and Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Mariko Tamaki and Rosemary Valero O'Connell. And the winner for Best Comic from a Mainstream Publisher is, drumroll, little drumroll, Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Mariko Tamaki and Rosemary Valero O'Connell. So congratulations, Rosemary and Mariko. wonderful book. And also congratulations to our other nominees. All of your work was great. We're very happy to read through all of your work just to see what is out there in the mainstream. So I hope everyone is being safe, staying healthy, taking care of themselves during this time of, what we're going through. And yeah, I just keep making queer comics. Couldn't ask for anything more than that. So.
Thank you. From the absolute bottom of my heart and from the bottom of Mariko's heart as well. Thank you to everyone involved in the decision-making process and to everyone that has been there both individually and as a team to support Mariko and I throughout the arduous but deeply satisfying creation of this book. Every bit of recognition and support that it has gotten means more than I have the words to express. But to have it recognized by the queer comics community specifically, especially among so many other breathtaking titles, is really the culmination of an honor. That this book is not only something that exists in the world, but that I got to help bring it into it, still feels utterly surreal to me. Mariko has been a hero of mine since the moment that her work first entered my world, and to be able to become a part of the universe of graphic novels by her side with this project has been a dream come true, to say the absolute least. Laura Dean represents the synthesis of so many of the things that draw me to storytelling and that keep my spark for comics ignited. It's a story saturated in unabashed and unquestioned queerness. It's a story about tenderness and growth, and it's a story where queer love, both platonic and romantic, is shown as the life-saving force that it is. When we both poured our hearts and souls into its creation, and to see it resonate with the people it's for, with young queer readers looking for something that feels true and loving to them, is all that I can ask for. So thank you again so much for seeing something special in this book. It changed my life, and to know that it's had some impact on yours as well makes me happier than I can say. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Savannah Ganicho, the co-author and illustrator of Bloom. Kevin and I are so immensely grateful for this nomination. Our number one goal creating Bloom was to create a reading experience that was joyful and calming, and in the last year, we've been so happy to hear loving reviews from our readers. Hector and Ari mean so much to us, and we love to hear how their love story has impacted all of you. On behalf of Kevin and I'd just like to say thank you so much to everyone at First Second, Charlie, our partners, our friends. We couldn't have made our big teal, loving, queer book without all of you, and I'm so proud of us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Colleen Venable.
And I'm Ellen T. Crenshaw.
And we created Kiss Number 8.
Thank you so much for this honor. We're completely blown away.
When I started writing Kiss Number 8 in 2004, it was the book that I really wanted when I was a teen. And I was searching for that book and realizing that there was such a lack of representation at the time. At that time, there were no books for teens with trans characters, and there were also no books for teens with bi or pan characters. And they were all like, oh, person comes out, oh, everything's great now. And it's not the way it happens. You come out of the closet and you just kind of keep coming out. You keep discovering things about yourself and you keep growing. And I worked on the book for a lot of years, and I also kept seeing that religion was always treated as the bad guy in books with any LGBTQIA plus content, and there is room for spirituality and to be queer. And I wanted there to be a book that explored kind of all these gray areas, and where all the characters in the books, whether the main character or the bad guys, all make mistakes and all sometimes do things that are actually pretty great. Except for one guy, he's a jerk. But other than everybody else, gray. And the story luckily came to life so much with Ellen's beautiful gray washes.
Thank you, Colleen. Well, when I first read Colleen's script, I wasn't even established in the comics industry yet, and I was mostly just making comics for myself. And when I read Colleen's script, it made me cry and it made me laugh and it really touched my heart. I felt such a huge connection to the characters. I just had to draw it. So, I mean, my favorite bits of the book are the complicated friendships, how, you know, you can have a friend who is both cruel and supportive, how the book subverts gender roles and subverts expectations around sexuality, that you can discover who you are and rediscover yourself over and over and over again. And what teen doesn't feel that they don't quite fit in their skin and they need to burst out and discover who they truly are?
I thought of this, you know, we set the book in 2004. And I thought of it like as a period piece, and it was like, oh, people are going to read this and be emotionally invested, but it's not going to be like, this is not the way it is now. And then I started getting emails. And unfortunately for a lot of teens, it is the way it still is. You know, emails from teens that were growing up in Mormon families that were having trouble coming out, from Catholic families, teens that were just like, I think I may be bi, but I'm not sure. And it was just so great to realize that it was connecting with people and kind of showing more people all these options that are out there. It's just so amazing to work on this, and I feel like Ellen too. Like it's just the collaboration was like it is completely created by the both of us, and I'm so grateful.
And we just wanted to quickly say thank you to our fellow nominees, Rosemary and Mariko, and Savannah and Kevin. Your books are incredible.
And we should also probably thank our publisher, First Second Books, and thank you so much, Prism Comics, and Cartoon Art Museum, and Queer Comics Expo. Again, we're just really, really honored to be on this list.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Victor Kearney. I am the author of Strangelore and a board member of Prism Comics. And for the last category of Prism Awards is the comic anthology. Now, what is an anthology? Well, it's a collection of shorter works written by one or two other authors as either self-published or gone through a publisher. So an anthology finalists are Come Together, edited by Tab Kempkin and Alex Hassan, Heartwood by Jomette Gill, Shut Out, edited by Andrew Willer. And the winner is Heartwood by Jomette Gill. So congratulations to you.
Hey everyone. This video means that Heartwood just won Outstanding Anthology at the Prism Queer Comics Awards this year. And gosh, it's such an honor, not just for me, absolutely not for me at all. It's for 29 of us, or 28. Forget if the 28 includes me. But yeah, over 24 non-binary creators from all over the world came together to create this book in 2018. It was our fastest selling title at Power and Magic Press to date. It's been life-changing. When I first made the call for submissions for it, I'd never really collaborated with anyone on something regarding gender identity, and just getting to read and edit everyone's fantastic takes on combining gender with the sort of liminal space that the forest affords us when we venture into it to discover the unknown, to learn lessons, to find ourselves and find others unlike and like us. It's an irreplaceable experience, and I wish we could all be in a physical space together to celebrate. But, until then, just thank you. Thank you so much for reviewing our book, for finding value in it, for validating the stories that we've told. And shout out to everyone else that's been nominated this year, whether they've won or not, because every single one of the stories that are honored at these awards deserve to be read, deserve to be lauded. And I encourage everyone to check out each and every single one if they haven't already, and to read Heartwood, of course. So again, thank you. Thank you so much.
Tab Kimpton here, co-editor of Come Together. Thank you so much for even considering our book alongside with these other amazing anthologies. Come Together came from our desire to showcase what Europe could offer the world of erotic comics. Projects like these are particularly important at a time where larger social media sites are clamping down on adult content, something that directly hurts already marginalised creators. Racism is not just an American problem, xenophobia is alive and well in all of our countries. Minorities often find their porn politicised anyway, so our anthology focuses in on the delight that comes from embracing people different to you. Connection, consent, and a whole lot of people coming together.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Hassan. I'm the co-editor of the Come Together anthology, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for this nomination on behalf of everyone that was involved. We really had an amazing time working on this anthology and getting to read so many wonderful, diverse, interesting, moving, sometimes funny, sexy stories. And specifically, we wanted to give a shout out to Nikki Smith, who really helped us put this anthology together. And honestly, we don't know if it would even exist without you. So when we were working on it, I guess my favorite part was the Discord server that we all had together. We all shared process, pictures, and just kind of like experiences from working on our comics. And it just felt really great getting to know so many interesting people from different countries. I think specifically after Brexit, it felt more important than ever. So really, thank you guys. Thank you to all the contributors who worked on the anthology. This one is completely yours.
Hello, I'm Andrew Wheeler. I'm the editor of Shout Out. I would like to say thank you to Prism and the panel of judges for their recognition of our anthology on behalf of myself, my assistant editors Joe McGill and BC Holmes, and our publisher Stephen Andrews. We're really proud of the work that we did on this book. The book was the work of more than 40 lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and non-binary, gender non-conforming, two-spirit, and ace and aromantic creators who wanted to tell the stories they wished that they had had growing up, stories where they could see people like themselves as the heroes. That was really what we set out to do with this book, and something that we're really proud to have achieved. So thank you again for that recognition. Putting together Shout Out for me was about proving that there is an incredible range of talent out there that's not being tapped into by the industry. We decided that we would open our doors to creators of all experience levels to put this book together, and so there are creators in Shout Out for whom this is their first ever published work, but the depth and quality of the talent, I think, is consistent and incredible all the way through. The highlight of putting this book together for me has been going out to shows, something we sadly can't do at the moment, but when we could, seeing the young audiences, queer people of all ages, but especially kids, coming to the table and seeing a book where they could recognize themselves, and seeing the enthusiasm and the passion and the confidence, honestly, of some of these young people. That's what we want to inspire. That's what we want to do more of. We set out to make a book where everyone was represented and where the people telling the stories had the same range of identities as the heroes in the stories. We are so grateful for the recognition that this award gives to this book, and we hope that it helps us to find even more readers to appreciate and share Shout Out. Thank you again.
So, thank you. On behalf of Prism Comics and all of us, thank you for watching the Prism Awards. We want to thank all of the creators who submitted to the awards, not just the people who are finalists and winners, but everybody who submitted. Your works were amazing. It was a tough process. We thank you. You're all out there representing and making change, and we thank you. We thank the judges and for all of their work, and to all of you for watching.
Thank you, Ted. Yeah, as well as he said, on behalf of the judges and everyone who put these awards, we want to thank you for joining us this year and for your patience.
And I want to thank Gladys and Nina. They were great.
Yeah, wherever we may be. Yeah, thank you everyone again. Thank you to everybody who's watching. Thank you to everyone who took a chance at submitting their work. Thank you to everybody that made this process possible. Ted, for your constant support through Prism. Gladys, for your support as the co-chair, or as the chair this year. And then also thank you on behalf of the Cartoon Art Museum and QCE. We are so excited to be doing this again next year for 2021. So if you've been making comics in quarantine, you've got a few months left from this year to get back to any projects you may have in mind that will be eligible to submit. Submissions will start around January or February for 2021. And as always, we immensely look forward to seeing what everybody's creating and how everyone is pushing the medium of queer comics forward into the world. Thank you again, everyone. Stay safe, have a great night, and hopefully a better rest of the year.
Thank you.
Bye.
I was going to do the exact same thing.